Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to the Red Flags webinar to help you understand um, how to help someone, or if you're here as a survivor, how to find some clarity and validation and confirmation with what you've experienced. Karina and I will be co-hosting this together, and we're going to go ahead and do a PowerPoint presentation to walk you through some of the information. So I'm going to go ahead and get that up. Second, let's get Judy back in. Let me make sure she's muted. So, yep. Okay, here we go. All right, red flags. Know the signs, trust yourself. I'll be looking to the side a little bit because that's where my screen is on my two monitors. So I am Diane. I am the founder and director of Living Waters of Hope. And it really all started in Pennsylvania. We have a couple of people from Pennsylvania. That's where the roots are, and so, which I love, although I'm here in Oregon. We are 501c3 for about the past 6+ years, although we started the ministry about 12 years ago. Karina joined us recently as our program coordinator, watching over our Oasis programs, support classes, and faith community. And she also is a survivor. So she'll be sharing some of her life experiences to help you on with this learning experience. All right, 6 red flags. The first is confusion. You may be in a relationship and you're like, Diane, he tells me he loves me, but then he treats me so disrespectfully. I just don't understand what's going on. Confusion is really common in these relationships. So if someone comes to you as a support person and they're using even the word confusion, that could be a red flag that something is going on. Ladies and gentlemen, in our marital relationships, there should not be confusion. There should not be confusion. Love should be clearly displayed. Jealousy and isolation. There are men, this is not for, the relationships may not reflect every one of these, but typically men are very jealous. They're jealous when their wives are pregnant and kids come along. They're jealous if she has a coworker, a friend who's a male. He could be jealous because she talked to a male at church and really give her a hard time and question her integrity. It is not unusual for them to move to another area to get that woman away from her support group, or just really say, oh, honey, I want you to stay home with me this weekend. And then so now she begins to cancel her plans with her friends. So jealousy and isolation kind of go hand in hand, but a lot of women do feel isolated. Again, some are free to do what they want, but if you have someone that's you're sensing is not able to come to an event, or maybe she comes and he's calling like the whole time or texting her, those are signs to be concerned about. And she may think it's love. She may, oh, he loves me so much, but that's the tricky part, especially when you're dating, right? It can come across so lovingly, but they could actually be red flags. Walking on eggshells. Every time she wants to share maybe opinion that's different from him, he reacts poorly. If she tries to resolve conflict, we'll talk about that in a minute, he doesn't want to do that. He's not wanting to take responsibility, and she's walking on eggshells. So even that term, sometimes women will use that term. That's just a real dead giveaway that there's something not healthy in that relationship. Or if you're here and you're saying to yourself, I'm walking on eggshells all the time. We'll talk more about this cycle of abuse in just a few more minutes. The inability to resolve conflict. This is huge. This is really across the board. She might say to him, honey, you know what? I've been thinking about what happened last night, and you had said that we were supposed to leave for this event at 9, but we really had talked about 10. And he said, I didn't say that. Yeah, remember we had that discussion and he'd say, no, no, it was 9. Even though she knows in her heart it was 10. And she's trying to make sense of this. And so she asks one more time, and then he says, oh, are you calling me a liar? So he short circuits the discussion. Or he gets angry. Oh, you're always bringing up that stuff, or just not taking responsibility. And in a healthy relationship, it's when we each can take responsibility for what we've done wrong. But when it's unhealthy, when there's control going on, he is unable and unwilling to do that. She's always to blame. She's always to blame. Ladies who are in these or out of these relationships, you can be doing everything right. Hold on, I've got to let someone in. Do a few things. You've been doing everything right, but even with doing everything right, he'll find something. And again, resolving conflict is just always going to be your fault. Inability to freely share your opinions. I mentioned that earlier. If you don't agree with someone who's controlling, he will criticize you, demean you, and shame you. So that's how he trains you to agree. That's how he trains a woman to eventually just stop sharing her opinion, because she knows what it's going to turn into. Unhealthy. These are just really unhealthy. Okay, our 6th one, and there are many more, but this is just where we are, what the ones we thought we'd cover that are key. You're unsure of your own perception of what's happening. Kind of that example where she's trying to resolve conflict and you say, well, I never said that. She will start to think, well, maybe it was 9 o'clock. Or she'll think when he says, well, I wouldn't have gotten angry if you just didn't talk to me that way. She might think, well, maybe I was talking to him kind of in a way that hurt his feelings. So it's the term kind of that is used in domestic circles is called gaslighting. And that's from a movie back in the 30s where the gal had married a guy and he wanted her money. So he would do all these things to make her think she's going crazy so she could be put in an institution so he could get her money and take over her management. They do things to just, I've heard, this is so sad, where dad would move the son's backpack. And he's saying, where's my backpack? And then the dad berates him for not knowing where he put his backpack, but the dad is moving it. And so what's a kid think? Why can't I remember where I put my backpack? It's crazy making. And women do, you start to doubt yourself. You start to doubt your feelings, your emotions, doubt what happened. And again, that goes with confusion. It's just a terrible place for a woman to be. It makes her really immobile. It's really crippling. So by the time she realizes something is wrong, she is just way down the road of just not even knowing what to do, what to think, what's right, what's wrong. Is it his fault? Is it her fault? This is where you come in if you're a support person to help clarify with her some of the dynamics. We've had gals say, oh, Diane, in our classes, our Oasis Bible study classes, you know what? In this lesson, I see that I'm finally putting words to what I'm feeling because I don't even know how to express it. But when they're educated through our classes, they're able to put words to really what they're feeling, which is so validating. Okay, we're going to move on. Karina's going to take you through 6 questions every woman should ask, or every support person should be thinking to ask someone that might be coming to them. This is the 6 red flags coming in from the back door with a question for her to be thinking and self-discovering. So, Karina.
Okay, so number 1 is, do you feel that something is off in your relationship but aren't sure what it is? Yeah, I think that this is really just the Holy Spirit. You get this gut feeling where, something's off. You don't know what it is. And that's kind of one of the, questions really asked, what is it that you're missing? Because yeah, what Diane was saying, women do feel like you're going crazy. I certainly, that's what I felt like when I was in my previous abusive relationship. Number two would be, does he react negatively when you want to spend time with friends or family or talk to another man who is a friend? Another huge indicator for that. If, because again, for an abuser, they want to isolate, they want to isolate you so that you're not getting, other outside advice, right? To, kind of question, hey, is this really, healthy or whatnot? And then number three would be, do you feel nervous around him, but you aren't sure why? And that's another thing as far as walking on eggshells. Sometimes you can kind of sense when the big, tension or an argument's going to come arise, and you don't know what you could have done wrong. I remember I would feel that all the time. And it would just keep progressing more and more. And then number four would be, does it seem though everything has gone or everything that goes wrong in a relationship was blamed on you? 100%. That was, I was the reason why, he would lash out or that he would, do destructive things because it was something that I did. Even if I would apologize, it would still never be enough. So then it brought me into this mentality to where, okay, maybe I might have deserved those things, because if I would have just done things right, that wouldn't have been that result. So, and then number five, do you feel that you cannot share an opinion that is different from his? That as well, it's, they almost take it as if it's like very offensive that maybe, have a different insight on something, or that if you disagree on, of a situation that, that you felt was, really wrong on his part, or, hey, I really, or even when I would say, I really felt hurt when you did this, and it was just still, it was just out of the question to where that wasn't irrelevant. So. And then number six, do you feel like you're going crazy sometimes? I mean, before gaslit was really even a word, that is exactly what women feel when they're going through an abusive relationship. Because there would be times where like Diane mentioned, he would say things, and when I would bring them up, he was, "Oh, I never said those things. What are you talking about? That you're just imagining those things." Or it was to the point where I thought, should I be recording these conversations so that, because I do feel like I'm going crazy. I remember what he said, these things, and for some reason it's still, he claims he didn't say that. And boy, they put up a really good show as far as making it sound like, oh, I could never say those things, or no, you took it the wrong way. You've probably, this is what you heard, this is what you interpreted, but this is what I meant. So again, yeah, do you feel like you're going crazy sometimes? That's exactly what it is.
Okay, we're going to go and just say, kind of go back to the bare bones and tell you the definition of domestic abuse. And this is right from the Department of Justice. Domestic abuse is a pattern, big word, important word, of abusive behavior in a relationship that is used by one partner to gain or maintain power and control over another intimate partner. So the big word is pattern. Just look for the patterns. If you're in a relationship or out and it's been unhealthy, ask yourself, what have been the patterns? Are some of the things I've just heard, have they been patterns in my relationship? Or if you're working with someone, this is a good question to ask. If she talks about what she has a hard time resolving an argument they had over the weekend, you can say, well, is that a pattern you see in this relationship? This helps her to self-discover what's really going on, because women, there's such an emotional tie to their husbands. They love them. They want the marriage to work. It's hard for them to see what you're seeing clearly. It takes them a much longer time to really think their husband is really being unloving to them. I mean, they see it, but we'll talk about this cycle where he's nice enough some of the time to make her think that he really does love her and he just is having a bad day. Okay, so these patterns, this includes behaviors that intimidate, manipulate, humiliate, isolate, frighten, terrorize, coerce, threaten, blame, hurt, injure, or wound someone. I just got chills. I mean, just think about that, living with that. And gals would say, Diane, I deal with all of that, every single one. So don't think it's just a few if you're new to understanding domestic abuse. Ephesians 4:31 says, get rid of all bitterness, rage, anger, brawling, slander, along with every form of malice. And Colossians 3 has a similar list, and it just calls it evil. And this is what women are living with. We just don't want to downplay it. They're married to the ones that we deal with, typically Christian men, that are acting in a way that is so unbiblical and so hurtful. And that's where the church really needs to come in to help. Okay, there are two tools we're going to talk about. One is the parent control wheel. These talks about all the different behavior types we just mentioned. We're going to talk more about the different types of abuse. I'm not going to go through it because we're talking about a lot of it in other slides, but I want you to know this is a key tool. It was developed after a group in Minnesota had done they interviewed a lot of women, and this is how the wheel was developed. If you Google domestic abuse wheel or wheels, there are many wheels. If you're dealing with someone who is Hispanic, there's one in Spanish. There's a spiritual abuse wheel. There is a post-separation wheel. There's a lot of different wheels out there. But for a woman, and sometimes what we do in our class, this is in one of our first book, we'll say circle the ones that you've experienced. And like their eyes get really open. Well, I didn't know that was abuse. Or they may 6 months later say, you know what, I would look back at the wheel and there's a lot more I didn't circle, but now I realize I had been experiencing. So it's a tool for you, whether you're a survivor or a support person, to use. In Ephesians 4:31, again, that same one, getting rid of that. God calls us to put that off and put on more godly traits. Our Quinn is going to take you through the cycle of abuse.
Okay.
This is part of the pattern also of what happens.
So the first one is always going to be calm, right? It's everything. I mean, kind of like the nickname honeymoon stage. Everything is great. He's doing things that, that are lovingly, like maybe, giving you a nice, beautiful love note, flowers, or doing something that you really like to enjoy. Everything is just fine and nothing, no bitterness, just everything is just great. And even the things that you've asked, or that you start seeing these sudden changes, in little baby steps. Oh, he's starting to do this now. He's, and but this behavior is often to keep you in a relationship or from telling someone about the abuse, right? And so, because again, if everything is great and dandy, you don't have to really share, what happened in the past. And so here you're thinking that things are finally moving forward in that right direction. And then it starts to where, which is the next, stage, which is the tension building. That's when things start to slowly change to where things are becoming critical, or maybe bringing something up, that was from the past, on his end. And you're kind of at this, well, great, I'm kind of waiting for this explosion, and, or even maybe even like you're getting a sudden silent treatment, sensing that something's wrong, that you've done something wrong. And again, walking on eggshells, you don't want to make it worse. You're hoping that it would just kind of go away. Maybe he's just having a not so great day. And maybe what can I do better to, maybe not get it to build any longer, Well, then at the next stage, it then becomes explosive. So an abusive event, where it becomes, unsafe, scary, fearful, intentional. And again, this behavior is used to, control your response. Now, with this explosive stage, you know, unfortunately, just my experience, every cycle that I've gone through, I mean, with the explosive, it just gets worse and worse and worse. He's doing more things that are building up to where it's uh, becoming, very unsafe. So, I mean, because at the very beginning, the explosive could just be something of just yelling, and which that's already, scary as it is, but it did build up to where he then put his hands on me. And then he destroyed my car and my home when I was, living with my parents. And so these things absolutely build over time. So, and then after that event, it comes back at stage one, which is calm and, I'm sorry, I'm really trying to work on this, or I mean, just the same excuses after excuses for that. And then, so controlling behavior is it's really just like clinical in nature. And this can cause just a lot of confusion and kind of false hope for women. Gosh, that right there, that's exactly what I went through. It's like you get confused to where and then you kind of feel bad in a sense. I remember feeling but he would mention about his troubling past, childhood, and then you kind of create excuses for him and reasoning for it, and making false hopes, saying, well, maybe if we just get him in the counseling, or if we just get him to do something, or maybe I can try to do something that will limit that explosive behavior, in the future, which women can't. We can't be able to, men are very capable, have to be held accountable for their actions, and there's nothing that women can do, that's going to really change that. So, and that was very difficult for me to learn. But last, the frequency, intensity of the abuse behavior, it does increase over time. Kind of what I mentioned earlier. It absolutely does. There hasn't been an incident where it doesn't. So you can really rely on that. It will increase over time. So, and if you're that support person, and I get that it could be really difficult, but really just keeping that behind, in the back of your head, that saying, this is, I really care for my friend or my loved one here. And, and I have to be able to, somehow get that through that, and just still be that support. And, and really just because that's the thing, women are going to want to, kind of just put things off to the side, but really this is kind of the reality that they have to face, when it comes to that. And then Diane, did you want to read the Psalms, or do you want me to read it? Okay.
Go ahead. You can go ahead and do it.
Okay. So the word, so from Psalms, verse 55:21, the word of his mouth were smoother than butter. The war was in his heart. His words were softer than oil, yet they were drawn swords.
It's amazing what's in the word, but that's exactly how women feel. Like these men can come across so nice, but there's just in his heart, it's just not good. Otherwise, God says within our heart we speak, and we do, right? And so there's not good things in his heart. Okay, we're going to talk about the different types of abuse, and I just want to share Ephesians 5:25, which is our model for marriage. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. Well, how did Christ love the church? He served. His love was sacrificial to the point of giving his life. He led, but with servant, and he told his disciples, the first shall be last, the last shall be first. So a husband is to have those qualities, that servant leader, that sacrificial, unconditional love, full of grace. That is what a marriage is supposed to look like. That's the role of the husband in the marriage. When that's not happening, things just fall apart no matter how much the woman is trying to make it work. Marriage does not work with one partner. It just needs two taking responsibility. So it's good to know what God gives us a beautiful blueprint of what marriage is supposed to be like. It just, unfortunately, doesn't always turn out that way. So we're going to talk about a couple different types of abuse. We've mentioned some of this before, but emotional, psychological, emotional, where you think you're going crazy, You have such hurt feelings, you're feeling that pain from his criticism, and it just really affects how you think and how you feel about yourself. And women begin to feel like they're broken, there's something wrong with them. It's just not good. Many end up in a discouragement that leading to depression. And those women have told us off and on throughout these years, Diane, I just didn't even want to wake up the next morning. Like they're talking about taking their life.
Mhm.
The darkness can be that dark. Verbal abuse, the criticism, the shaming, the blaming. These two, everyone goes through this because it's almost an umbrella over so many other types of things, where you just feel like you can't do anything right. And if you did everything on his list, he'll find something because he has to find something wrong to maintain the control over the woman. Financial abuse. This looks differently for different women. Maybe he'll change the password on the bank account online, but he doesn't tell her. Maybe he has hidden accounts. Maybe he criticizes her. We had one gal and she said, I went to Costco and I bought like those big packages of paper towels and I came home and he was just irate that I spent that much money. But I'm trying to explain to him I'm saving money. But he just, again, the blaming, the shame, and the criticism. She said, then I find out he went and bought some type of an exercise device. So he wants to limit the woman while he is spending freely. Again, it's just all about control. And some gals say he wants to look at my receipt when I come home from the store. He's wanting to be sure I'm home in a timely manner. So otherwise he'll say, well, are you meeting somebody else? It's just so crazy that women, and some gals, they may say, I've not had financial abuse. I've been the one handling the money, but some definitely have had those issues. Spiritual abuse. Well, you have to submit to me. God says, I'm the leader and you have to do everything I tell you. Well, this carries into the bedroom, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But then she feels like she doesn't have a voice. But God in his word says multiple times about leadership, you don't lord it over someone. Again, Ephesians 5:25, it's a servant leader. In 5:21, it tells us submit to one another. So when it talks about marriage, it's just kind of a talking about the order of things. And it doesn't mean the woman is any less valuable. She comes under his authority, but they can function very equally in many ways. My husband and I, we talk about decisions all the time, but there are things that you know, he can make a final decision. I'm fine with that because he loves me. I trust him, which is what women in controlling relationships don't have. They don't have that trust relationship. When you have a trust relationship with your husband, it's so easy to work together in a marriage and decision making. I'm going to stop here and ask Karina, how did this look? What did this look like in your relationship, Karina?
Um, yeah, I mean, definitely I've experienced all of those things. And, to the point, with jealousy, that was a really huge one. To where if I, dressed a certain way, if I, did my hair or my makeup, that he automatically assumed that I was trying to attract attention from other men. Or heaven forbid if another, man complimented me on something, that would have was a coworker, that was immediately I was labeled as a cheater, and so it was just this constant battle of things that I was doing wrong. But what that was doing was he was trying to diminish my self-esteem so that I would seek, my you know, any kind of compliment or anything any kind of compliments or anything like that, it would or sourcely come from him. It made me question kind of who I am, what are my, gifts, and who I was as a person. So, yeah.
Okay, we're going to move on to sexual abuse. This is such a hard, painful thing. You know, I added this lesson in when I was writing book two because so many women would bring it up. And of we have several lessons where women just cry. This is one of them because the pain
Mhm.
is so deep. They've given everything to the husband, and then he takes advantage of her in the bedroom, especially with the high use of pornography, where men can easily objectify the woman. It's just really an awful part. Not that everyone deals with this, but many do. Property damage. Um, this is just shy of him hitting you. But what's his point? To scare you so that you do what he tells you to do. I had to guess at Dan, I really got really good at fixing the holes in our walls. Christian woman with a Christian husband. Sometimes he'll throw the phone. I had a gal say he was always throwing something. One time he threw my phone so hard it broke the mirror in the bathroom. Like that is a forceful throw to break a mirror. So they might knock over a lamp or pound the table or um, there's one gal, she collected crystal figurines, and she had left separate for just, I think she just was going away for like the weekend to have a break, and she comes back and he broke all of her crystal pieces. So it's just a way to get back at her, but it's also a way to make her live in fear that she's going to be the one that's going to be hit next. And I'll tell you, if you're around that, you will do whatever you need to do not to get, out of the fear of being hit. But that's a precursor to physical abuse. So if someone is doing that, that woman is now feeling safe, and he could cross that line into physical abuse. This is the pinching and the slapping and the hitting and the all kinds of things, restraining her from trying to leave a room to get to safety. But I want to mention one thing, and that is if he is choking her. In many states, that is a felony offense. A felony offense. Um, uh, it has proven that in research, statistically, if he is strangling or choking his wife, he is 750 more times likely to kill her. So if someone, and this is something you might want to ask, if you sense that there's some aggressiveness, you can say, has he ever put his hands around your throat? Now they may not really want to tell you that up front. It may take some time for her to say that, but that's a danger sign. Policemen who go on these 911 calls for domestic abuse, those who are killed, typically that man has had a history of choking women. It's a serious thing. Karina, is there anything you want to add to that bottom
Mm.
line?
I will say that, typical if they're an abuser, they will never do the physical abuse first. So that's something else to keep in mind because a lot of times, for um, friends who, never been through this kind of situation before, you know, when it came out that when he did, they would be very, how could you want to be with someone like that would want to put your hands on you? Well, you know, you have to understand that it's never going to start that way. A relationship, getting to know the person, they're not going to ever show their true colors like that in the very beginning. And when the abuse starts to happen, it did not start, physical. It started with these other, types that were here, the psychological, the emotional, those are all very early signs, that would then lead up to physical. So that's something I just wanted to point out there.
Yeah, that's a good point, Karina. And um, women will be very hesitant to tell you that that's happening in the relationship. I mean, years after gals have been in our class and we might be visiting, she'll bring it up. And it's like, oh my gosh, she never mentioned that in class. Or they'll bring up, and this is a real story. Diane, I was on My husband and I took a cruise trip with two of our really good friends, and I was so at the end of my rope. She said, I thought about jumping off of that ship and drowning. She said, my friends had no idea, and they were very good friends. I had no idea what was going on. Thank goodness she didn't. She found Oasis. She's one of our facilitators helping other women. But that darkness can be very dark, can be very dark. Okay, next steps and resources. Keep learning, whether you're a survivor or you're a support person. We have a Hope Giver Essentials, which is a level 1 training on domestic abuse. You'll hear some of what I said, but we'll go into much more detail. It's 4 30-minute videos. We have a case study in each one, a woman who's sharing her story. So it's good for, I've had churches do it, and I'll go and do a Q&A with them afterwards in person or virtually. And some elders had done it, and I joined them to answer their questions virtually. So this is a tool for you to use. Our winter Oasis support groups are starting up in just a week and a half, 2 weeks from Monday. Our classes are starting. So if you are ready to take the next step, if you know someone who is ready to take the next step, we would love to have them in our classes. We have a private Facebook group. We have emails that go just to our Oasis gals. We have Oasis, what we call Oasis Connect Zoom meetings on occasion where, like, we'll have one coming on Valentine's Day because Valentine's Day is a hard day. We had one around the holidays. We had one with the New Year's to say, what are your hopes for this month or for this year? So we really do try to nurture the relationships with the women that come to see us locally. Our local Oasis women, they're coming to my house for lunch for Valentine's Day. So we care about the gals that come to us. It's a safe and confidential online community. Women just love it. As a matter of fact, what I want to do is share, just this is a minute and a half. I'll do real quick. I'm going to share this. I might not share the whole thing, but this will just help us all take a pause and hear what women are saying about the support classes. These gals are just amazing. All right. Karina is going to take you through the next part here.
Okay, so yeah, so other, next steps and resources, so we always stay, connected. We send out weekly emails, to everyone who's, either went to Oasis class or for any of our partners, just to really stay informed. And we always like to make it very positive, just for everyone to get out of. And if you're able to just follow us on social media, we have a Facebook and Instagram, and we would love to just stay connected with you guys, and even just to spread more of the word. And, just because we really want to keep finding, more communities and just really to give more hope, to reach more women. But we do, like I mentioned, we have an online Oasis support class, which actually starts in 2 weeks. So it's anywhere between, it's, book 1, 2, and 3. If this is maybe like your first time, or if there's someone that is their first time, we typically like you to have start with either book 1 or book 2. So, but we are giving a 20% off discount code, which is that promo code there. You guys could be able to either screenshot or take a picture. I will also send in another follow-up email, so stay tuned for that. But I will say, for every woman that starts our class, Diane, I know you can attest to this as well, but I've just seen women walk in completely discouraged, broken, and just and for them to come out of that a completely changed woman, seeing, hope in them, and really just being transformed. So it is a beautiful experience. So it's anywhere between 10 to 12 weeks. And we meet once a week. It's all through Zoom. So we're able to meet women, nationally and even around the world. So, we will love to be able to help them in their healing journey. And, we just thank you guys so much for taking the time, to meet with us here and to discuss the red flags.